Hello, and please, for the love of God, keep your gloves on. My name is Ebube, and you are listening to Popcorn for Dinner. It's finally here. We are finally here. We made it. The season premiere, double episode release of Pluribus on Apple TV+. This has been a long time coming. We are very excited. We have a lot to say about the episodes that we've just received. The TV landscape is shifting yet again. And I know I said last time that hopefully we would only be confused in the best ways. I'm pleased to report that that came true, but the downside of that is we are confused. But I guess the good side of being confused is we have a lot to discuss because there's a lot to figure out. I'm joined, as promised, once again by Cris. Hi, Cris. Please tell the people how you're confused.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's things answered, but I just have so many questions. Episode 2, I have about 5 pages of notes of just all of the revelations that came to light in that episode. It was crazy.
Our work is cut out for us. Yeah, I don't even know where to start, but maybe the best place to start actually would be to welcome Pete Peppers back to the podcast because he was actually able to join us for the premiere. And yeah, I'm guessing his notes might even be a bit more extensive. Pete, how you doing?
Oh yeah, I'm happy that we got to come back because some of the stuff we were talking about last time we got together, we can expand on that a little bit. Those chatty Cathys over at the Forest Service, huh? Those guys, they're probably bouncing something off the moon. But yeah, I agree with what everyone is saying here. You know, I like that they really kind of presented the premise, presented the mystery, and by the end of the first hour, they explain everything we need to know about it. Like that was kind of baller when you think about it. Just to be like, yeah, we know you're thinking about this stuff, so we're just gonna lay it out for you. But then, like, there's so much, like you said, in the second, you were talking about notes, and I'm honestly not done taking the notes from the second episode yet because I just went down so many different rabbit holes in the first one that, like, the second one, I was like, all right, let's focus on the TV here. Like, what did I just see? How did, what does it mean? How did I feel? And I'll get into the details of that one later because there's just so much to unpack. Like, it's crazy. But, like I said, they laid it out, they answered it, but then they also, like, there's so much that you're left thinking about. And they shifted from, like, mystery to these philosophical questions, like, so nicely. Like, I was really worried about getting my expectations up for this show. And I don't know. I'm pretty happy. What did you guys think?
I loved it. It's such a unique tone. It was absurd and surreal, very funny, but they're able to hop between tones too. The first episode kind of played like a horror movie, and that's the one that had the kind of like old school sci-fi vibes with different homages to like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But then the second episode felt very like Truman Show maybe, and a little more like dystopian because it moves to the psychological consequences of all of this. And I don't know, I love that it's able to hop between tones. It was entertaining. I absolutely loved it. And just to hop off on something you said about how much information they give you up front, I like that they do that in episode 1 because even though there's still questions as to maybe why this virus was sent and by who, I think it ultimately brings the central question of the story from like a big one about the world to like a very personal one about Carol. Like it shows a little bit more about, why is Carol specifically immune and what makes her different. And I kind of like that it brings it into more of a personal journey.
I agree. I loved it. I thought it was nice to get the confirmation that this will be a deep character drama. I always say, of course, that character is the best place to anchor yourself when writing a good show. And
of course,
there's clearly something for us to look forward to, something for us to sink our teeth into with Carol. And her motivations are quite clear, right? We talked in our last conversation about how the world changes very drastically in the first episode. Oh my God, that is the understatement of the year. Like, what on earth? That is a drastic change. Which, by the way, I love the countdown timer. Clearly, that is a motif that they went ahead and put in some of those promos, and like, it's cool that that's a real thing. Like, it was counting down, and then now it's counting up because it's like, this amount of time since incident, and it's fun to see that. I think it's also very cool that the hour-long episode ends with the count up timer reaching 1 hour, just to kind of keep us a little bit grounded in things. Carol has had quite a day, but I guess before we start talking about Carol's day, before we get too carried away, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Pete and Cris, for being here again. We have a lot that we've covered on the podcast. If you don't know, we did a preview episode for this show, and that is out on the feed right now. So if you still want a little bit of a primer, you haven't seen the trailers yet, or maybe you haven't even watched the episode yet, definitely go listen to that. It will give you an idea of what to expect. And while you're at it, you can check out some of the other stuff that we've covered recently. We talked about Slow Horses, Gen V. Is This Cinema has put episodes out on a bunch of fun movies, including The Smashing Machine. And, we will have our thoughts about each episode weekly as they drop on Apple TV Plus. If that's ever not going to be the case, we'll let you guys know ahead of time. But we feel pretty confident that this is going to be a fairly smooth sailing on a very smooth season of this show. Please follow us on social media and anywhere that you listen to your podcasts, YouTube as well. Rate us and review us. Ask us questions at popcornfordinnerpod@gmail.com or on social media. We want to hear your theories. We want to know what you're thinking. We definitely want to... we need all the help we can get in figuring out what is going on with this show. But I guess in terms of figuring out what's going on with this show, I guess we should start with the basics. Both episodes are directed by Vince Gilligan. So they definitely, yes. So they have that unique feel that he brings to his work. There's a very clear sense of, visual symmetry, visual precision, and visual establishment. I mean, this man loves his scientists. This man loves his wide establishing shots and focus racks. It has all the, I guess, visual identity of what you might expect from a story that Vince Gilligan is telling. Like, there's just so much information on the screen at all times. Like, no shot is wasted, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
I was waiting for it, and I was really happy to see that we got the object POV whenever he was. It's actually a Breaking Bad Better Call Saul character too. The guy that plays Nick, whose name is escaping me right now, but his name in this show is Mel, and he works at the infectious disease place, and he's trying to get into the vending machine. He got his Fritos stuck in there. And they have the camera inside the machine, and we watch her approach. I thought that really brought back some fond memories of Breaking Bad in particular.
Yeah, really experimental shots. It's always nice to actually see people use visual media as visual media. It's like you're watching a show. So what ways can they tell this story? Because we're watching a TV show that they might not be able to tell us if it was, say, a novel, right? I think every medium has its own strengths and has its own unique things that it can use to actually engage the audience. And I think Vince Gilligan and his team are always really, really good at utilizing those things.
Yeah, I think that second half of the episode was really excellently shot, from the minute the virus hits and she goes into the bar for the first time. And I don't know, the way the camera sort of
the wonder,
pans around.
Fans of the studio unite.
Yes, that was really well done. And I mean, obviously the rest of the episode isn't one shot, but like you're with Carol for that whole time, and it really never leaves her face. And I feel like, I don't know, it has this very claustrophobic sort of horror movie vibe as you're moving with her, and she's seeing all of this for the first time.
Yeah, right up until the point where she falls.
Just the sense of just bewilderment. I mean, I think that's the way he describes it on the TV when he's talking to her at the end of the episode. We understand how bewildered you must be, and like, yeah, like, you know, I kind of brought this up last week, how they would develop her without a scene partner, you know, like a throughout, that would be consistent throughout the series, perhaps, or whatever. And yeah, like I thought that they did that in some really creative ways here that we'll get into, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's fun because Vince Gilligan wanted people to kind of go into this a little bit blind, and I think that comes from his own experience. I know he's talked a little bit about how when he was much younger, of course, I think he said it was like 32 years ago, like he just came across X-Files and he was like, what the heck is this? And, you know, it turns out that he was still writing for just movies at the time. And, you know, he ended up thankfully getting a chance to actually work on X-Files. And I think he wanted to replicate that feeling of people going in blind, not knowing what's coming. Like, we live in an era now where, you know, when a show is coming out, you know a lot about it before it even starts. Some trailers will even give you the whole plot. And this show worked very, very hard to make sure that we knew as little as possible. So much now that I basically have a mental teaser checklist. Like every time a moment from one of those teasers comes in, I'm just like, oh, look, you know, it's like I'm Leonardo DiCaprio in that one meme. But I feel like we have questions that are worth asking. Of course, we know where this whole quote unquote virus came from because the virus itself told us. However, I don't know that anyone actually understands what dude on TV with what I can only describe as president face says.
Yeah.
And I have this thing where
he had a suit.
Yeah, he had a suit.
Yeah,
There's a way.
He was nearby and intact.
Intact.
Boom.
Yeah,
that's all you need, right? And I feel like there is a way that people who play the U.S. president on TV and movies, there's just a way they look, and this guy just has that look. I mean, looking him up, I actually also don't know. And Pete, based on your video, I'm pretty sure you will agree with this. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody credited for this number of appearances.
3,000 plus.
Like what?
Episodes.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I forget which, I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but he was on
The Young and the Restless, among other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually crazy.
His
name
he
is
was
Peter
in
Bergman.
literally over 3,000 episodes. He's been on it since the 90s, and they do, I guess, 5 episodes a week, right? That's the way
pretty
soap
much.
operas works. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Pretty much. And I think, I mean, he's actually like 72 years old, which may not have come through on screen, but yeah, this is a seasoned actor. And honestly, all the performances are amazing in this episode. You know, everybody is the right amount of airy. Everybody's the right amount of excited. I mean, I'm thinking about the scientists at the beginning who are like, you know, this can't be happening. And then we're just like, what are you guys talking about? And I'm looking forward to learning more about what they figured out, you know, in their little, I guess, science shed is what I'll call it. And how that relates to the actual thing that was being kind of cultured in those rats. And I'll hopefully figure that out after I learn why somebody would take off their glove to touch a lab rat. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure that was the entire point of the glove, sis. But
Yeah.
she did it anyway.
For 8 months,
now
they
we're in the position we're in.
they didn't see any kind of any manifestation of the virus, or I guess it's not exactly a virus, but
Yeah.
they thought it was. I guess they let their guard down a little bit, considering that, you know, nothing was happening.
why is it always tiny animals?
Normal human error.
Yeah.
But in terms of the science, I mean, at first I was like, am I getting this? I mean, my understanding was that it's like beaming down like a code, basically, right? And then they essentially made the genetic code, and that's how the virus was cultured, right? So, I mean, I like I said, I like that they just tell you all of that up front. Like, you know, we don't have to find out how this really happened. But like I said, the question is still there as to why this was sent, when it was sent. I know it was like 68 light years away or something. But yeah,
I think
who it
600,
came from. I feel like
crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like that's way down the line. Like that's probably like future seasons of the show, perhaps. But it brings up a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing about viruses, right? The only thing they ever want to do is spread. And I feel like the genuine collaboration that comes from those initial unnamed characters, like once they start to actually work together, they're working into that room and then they're licking all the stuff, putting it everywhere, making sure that they can spread as quickly as possible. Of course, we found out in episode 2 that, you know, they had kind of been going little by little for a while, and then they were discovered by the military, and it's like, you know, we got to speed things up. So that is eerie in itself. But I think so many of these things were eerie to watch. I mean, of course, that moment where they're licking things, that is definitely like an immediate conversation that and confirmation that this is a hive mind. Like, there's no question about that. I want you to know that from the jump. This is a hive mind.
Yeah.
And then you have Carol, who is obviously very individualistic, but has solace in the fact that she has Helen, right? This is somebody who clearly is not a huge fan of her own work. And I think hating one's own art is a very specific brand of misery. I wonder if the show is kind of making a pointed commentary on something there. But yeah, what did you guys think of Carol's first appearance and the contrast between how she was at that reading and how she is for basically the rest of it, when like basically the real Carol jumps out because what the heck is going on?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard Ray talk about this, and I definitely got that from the show, is that, you know, it's very much a form of self-loathing. Hating her art and her book and what she puts out there is sort of an extension of herself, and feeling like, you know, having fans and having people who adore her, they're almost wrong for that because she doesn't like herself. And I mean, I see this whole show as like a metaphor for depression, and you see that everywhere with her alcoholism, her anger, the way she reacts to situations. So I'm really loving the character arc they're starting. I feel like I got so much about her without them having to say too much or do too much within the episode.
Yeah. I thought I really enjoyed how they didn't hold our hands. They showed us everything about them, and they let that develop naturally. You know what I mean? Like, they do eventually kind of say everything out loud in conversation, but it's all natural. And, you know, it's sort of like, you know, you're wondering, like, at least for me, because I didn't know how big of a thing historical romance was. Like, I didn't know it was like a huge industry. When I first heard that, I was like, "Oh, that sounds kind of niche or whatever." But turns out, no.
Nope.
Like, these books are huge.
Gotta get on Book Talk.
Yeah. So, like, you know, like so you know she's successful, right? Just through these little signifiers that we see. You know, they drive a Range Rover. It's not a regular car, and
bad for emergencies, though. Clearly,
yeah, and you know, but. Like, the biggest takeaway I had from her was that she's successful. You know what I mean? That's shown to us. She's successful, but she's not satisfied, you know? And, and I like this whole parallel of that, because I thought the biggest moment in the first episode, the one that stuck with me the most, was, you know, when Helen's dying, she's trying to do CPR, and she's overwhelmed, and she says, "Please, somebody help me." You know what I mean? And then a
Yeah.
few minutes later, when everyone wakes up, they say, we just want to help. And it's like, no, not like
No.
that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
This is not what I meant. This is not what I ordered.
This is not what I meant. And I really like the parallel that they're setting up there with like how, yes, they everything is kind of perfect in a way, but it's not that, they don't want to, like, she doesn't want help to come that way, like, just like she's successful, but she wants it to come for something more meaningful in her mind. Right. But then also she does this obviously because it's easier for her to do. So she's taking the easy route and she's getting paid, and she has a lot of adoration from her fans and everything. And she can say, oh, well, it's not real art or whatever, but it's something. As
thankfully, she doesn't need money anymore.
Yeah. Like that's a big something in the world when you don't need money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to like jump to episode 2 details at all yet, but I mean, like you said with her, I think there's that idea too that she sort of has some shame or like hiding bits of herself just because of the plot point later that, she was going to write, like a lesbian romance novel and have the male character be a woman. And she said that, they decided against that because that wouldn't be the mainstream, more successful thing. So,
yeah.
But maybe that would have made her happy, right? It's that idea of like what would give you satisfaction, the actual material success, or writing a story that's maybe more true to you and your life experiences. But she's never gone that route yet, presumably. So yeah, it brings up, I think right there is that kind of central idea of what is actually going to make you happy.
Yeah. And what are you willing to give
agree.
up? Like that's the other end of it. Right. And I guess in her case, we can say that she wasn't willing to give that part of herself up at that point, right? She wanted to keep that a secret. And like I said, she has success. Her fans are clearly very engaged. The book reading was pretty great. And like you said,
that was too accurate.
Yeah, and like you said, the Science Shack also, like that. Those are the things that I was really, missing in my life, were those crazy side characters that Vince Gilligan brings into.
It's fantastic,
and it
reminds me of the AV kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I love those guys. They were annoying at first, but you just grow to love them. It's like, where would this be without them?
Yeah.
And the truth is, whatever Carol was willing to give up, she definitely wasn't willing to give up Helen, right?
No.
I mean, chest compressions under a broken streetlight, absolutely nuts, man. Like,
I really love that detail of the transformer. Like flashing,
flickering,
like
and everything.
In the background.
It was part of what added to just the stress of it all. Like I figured something would happen to Helen, since Carol is clearly completely alone in everything we had seen of the show thus far. But I didn't know it'd be like this. And honestly, it raises one of my biggest questions so far in the show. I think, of course, one question that the show wants us to be asking right now is, why is Carol immune? But I think another question that I have that's huge is, why did Helen die? That's actually something that I really need to understand, and I'm looking forward to finding out. I think I have the
answer to that.
Oh, okay.
If you watch, when she falls, she hits her head.
She does, yeah.
And so when I was rewatching it and checking things out, I noticed that, they have the scene where she joins them, of course, Carol
Briefly
thinks that she's smiling because she's waking up and she's seeing her, but then we learn later that she's actually waking up to be a part of the
hive.
The hive, I guess is the best way to describe it. But you also see that she has this bruising around her eyes. It's like redness. And I was looking that up, and that is called, like the simple term is raccoon eyes, basically. You know what I mean? It's a raccoon.
Yeah, I did notice
bruising.
that, and I wondered why.
Yeah. And I was like, I like put it into Google, like what what does it mean whenever you get a head injury and there's redness around there? I was like, go directly to the hospital because that's a sure sign that
Wow.
you fractured your skull. It's like,
Jeez.
yeah. So,
oh my God.
At least as far as, what was on screen, I think they're telling us that it was just unlucky that she was standing at where she was standing at that time whenever it happened. And so therefore she sustained an injury that she couldn't recover from.
That is amazing attention to detail.
It is interesting, though, because there were other people in the bar that were seizing while standing up. But like you said, maybe it's just bad luck, right? Like, I don't know, maybe the angle you're kind of standing at the time. But she kind of froze and then fell. So,
and we learn about this. Like we actually learn about this a little bit in episode 2. But of course, we started thinking about it from episode 1, and we got hints of it. Like the fact that people genuinely do die when they have these, I guess, resets. And when I saw the seizing happening over and over and over again, I was like, okay, what exactly is happening? Like, is this a kind of like a software update of sorts? Is this the thing kind of doing a refresh? Are they figuring out like the information? And, the fact that whenever that happens, obviously everybody in the world stops whatever they're doing. If you're in a terrible position, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Like we saw
driving
that
a car, flying a plane.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
You see some examples of both in the...
I mean, yeah. And it lasts a solid amount of time. It's not like this is 2 seconds and like, oh, I zoned out. This is like they're violently seizing for like a little bit. Like in the first episode, in the background of that bar, like in the bar kitchen, you can see that there's a guy who is still seizing but landed on his head and is definitely not going to be waking up. So they kind of established that early on, and I like how that adds to the issue of the world, because then Carol takes that upon herself, because not only is she being coerced by everybody around her to be happy at all times, her not being happy is actually dangerous to people. And you can see how that is affecting her, like she leans even more to the alcoholism.
I didn't necessarily anticipate was that she would have this superpower, I guess, in a way that if she loses her temper, she can glitch out the whole planet.
Yeah. I really liked this detail and kind of how it relates to the themes of what I'm taking from the show, because like I said, it really does feel like, obviously she drinks too much. She's maybe an alcoholic, if we want to classify her that way. But
maybe.
I mean, I'm being so kind, but
I'm just like,
when you
because
have
man, like she that first at first I wasn't even blaming her. No, because it was like after what happened that first night, I wouldn't have been able to sleep either. Like I thought okay, she drank that much, she drank herself to sleep, because they went out of their way to show us the bottle kind of like toppled over, right?
Yeah.
So like, okay, she drank herself to sleep because that was the only way she could have slept. But as you're saying, Cris, like clearly it's more than that. Like she literally turns to the alcohol every time she needs any form of pacification.
Well, what did you guys think about the breathalyzer lock? I mean, that was a pretty big thing you can't miss. You know what I mean? Like
I think it's alluding to it's alluding to what Cris is saying. Yeah,
that's what that means, right? Is that one of them? I got a little confused because Helen would drink Diet Pepsi, so I wasn't sure if the implication that Helen had a drinking problem and she stopped, and Carol is just continued, or if it was more of a thing where Carol has had real consequences for drinking and hasn't stopped.
I think the latter. I think she's the one that's probably had DUIs, because we see how much she drinks in
I think
episodes.
That makes more sense.
And I think just showing at the bar that like Helen's someone that just can restrain herself. Like we just had a long book tour. I'm tired. We should sleep well. And then Carol's the one that's kind of trying to push her. Like, you should be having a real drink. Like it's crazy to not have a real drink right now.
About it too.
She doesn't clink glasses with Diet Pepsi. Which
Diet Pepsi.
That is elitist, but oh well.
And I think that's what's interesting about the show, is that I think, in the past, her, the consequences were maybe she hurt one or two people, or like a small group of people through her actions, right? And now basically all the issues that she had pre-virus are now just amplified to this giant degree. Like now when she loses her temper, gets angry, the consequences are killing millions of people. And that's like, I don't know, that's like the worst fear for someone with, mental health issues or whatever. It's like all of your worst instincts and shame and guilt are now just amplified. And I think that's really fascinating.
That's an interesting angle, because if you think about it, everyone that is not Carol is focused on Carol.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like how does that feel? Like, and they have her partner's memories inside them.
So they know everything about her.
Because Helen joined them. So like they know everything. They know all of her intimate details. So everywhere she goes, she's on full blast. Like everybody knows exactly
Isn't that
what's
crazy
going on
though?
with her.
Because if Helen had died literally a second later or a second earlier before joining, then they wouldn't have Carol's information. And this might be a completely different landscape for the show.
Yeah.
Like
and they showed how private she was earlier too. Like they showed she was a private person. She didn't reveal all of herself to her fans, and now the privacy is gone. This is
a whole new frontier for her. I think it's
delicious.
I think it's interesting. It's really good, and there's a lot to sink into. Somehow, this is just as unsettling as The Last of Us, maybe even better. Like in terms of how the zombified people were moving around, but they're not zombified really. I mean, at one point when Carol was driving away in tears, I was worried for a moment that Helen was going to slowly stand up in the truck's cargo bed in the background. Thank God that did not happen, because she's been through enough already. But I feel like the fact that, it knows this much about her gives her something where at some point she can kind of accept. This is like, okay, all our cards are on the table now. You're going to give me whatever I want, whatever. But I think the guilt will still set in for her, because no matter how much she hates what's happening, in the end, just as a person, like just a human being with normal conventional morals, she can't deal with the fact that that her deliberate actions of lashing out are hurting actual human beings. I think about the scene, for example, where she, in episode 2, where she kind of goes out and she comes back and she says the pirate lady can come back if she wants. And I wonder, like, why do you guys think she does that? Like, I have like a kind of an answer to this that I've come up with on my own. But what did you guys feel about that? Like when Rabana, as I was calling her before, her name was, I just named her Rabana in my head. But yeah, Zosha is great. I feel like once she started seizing, and there was no answer for that, and Carol gets in the truck. I'm like, okay, she's gonna try and put her in the truck, but that wouldn't make sense because there's no way to take her. Like the hospital is cooked, so where is she going? So like, I guess she's looking for help, and then she finds that guy who's hanging. And I think somewhere there, right? She kind of like realizes something, but then she comes back. So what do you guys think? Why does she ask for Zosha to be returned to her?
Well, I think the guilt, like you're saying, like seeing that guy seizing, seeing like the consequences of these actions, like, it kind of humanizes them. Like you see them physically suffering in a way. But I think the writing is very smart with Zosha specifically, because you might think, okay, all of these people are in a hive mind, so why does she need Zosha specifically, right? Because all of these people should have Helen's memories and they're all one person. But she is like the physical manifestation of a secret in something private that she had with Helen. So,
which is still, by the way, not private anymore.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like physically, she is like a reminder of Helen
agree.
now.
Yeah, she is Rabana.
And I think that I think that's like really smart to make both us and Carol invested in a character that is part of the hive mind,
By the way, the lengths that they went, let's just call it the lengths that they went through to get Zosha there. Like, if you're looking around, like in those initial establishing shots of episode 2, right? That, like, first of all, it's another classic Vince Gilligan disparate cold open that feels disconnected until you realize what's really happening. You know, the fact that they showed her activating each engine, and of course, like, it's also teaching us more about how the thing works, right? Because these things don't talk, the people, they don't talk to each other, and of course they don't. They're one mind. Everybody's just in perfect synchronization.
That's where it really dawned on me when she walks up in there, that if it's everybody, then you know how to do everything. You know
literally
what I mean?
everything.
Of course, you're just going to walk right into the cockpit. And they really kind of cracked me up later whenever they had the woman in the TGI Fridays uniform.
Oh my God.
It's
just like,
that's
and it's
so
funny,
funny.
because like Robana, as I love to call her, could have flown this plane herself, but she didn't. She's like, no, I'm going to be concierge now. You know, like, so I have a role to play. And that's also the crazy thing about, you know, the flying. You know, this plane came from Tangier Airport. Like, you can see it on the sign. Tangier Airport is in Ibn Battuta. Like, that is in Morocco.
That's like they flew Morocco, right?
Yes, they flew Zosha from Morocco because she fit the exact bill of what Raban looks like, all the way to Albuquerque. I mean, come on. Like, this is, like, first of all, she needed that shower. And you can see everything. Like, you can see them working on the wig in the background. Like, everything was
the
created.
Makeup case reveal was a really cool Vince shot, I thought, when that was actually all those colors. Like,
everything just makes sense, like, right when you need it to make sense. And I love that. I mean, even all the little details, even the title sequence that we get in episode 2, you know, it's cool to see all these things kind of come together, and just that level of guilt that she has from doing so much to so many people. I mean, I guess in order to really understand the context of that, we should probably talk about how she really feels the need to interact with other immune people. I mean, we're told at the end of episode 1 that there are 11 of them. And by episode 2, there are now 12, which is, I guess,
that's
cool
an interesting detail. Like, you know, we were talking about the different mysteries they have. Like, I feel like that's pretty conspicuous that this guy in Paraguay popped up on their radar so much later than the rest of them.
Yeah, like, was he asleep somewhere? Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, there's got to be a reason, you know, that he wasn't known. Like, by the time she gets home, like, that's like 3 hours or something, right? Not even. The countdown shows us whenever she talks to the agriculture guy on TV.
I mean, by the end of the episode, it was 1 hour on the counter.
Oh yeah, so less than an hour. They already identified everyone else, but they didn't figure out that this guy was in Paraguay until a day later. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail, but that's one of the mysteries that really popped up to me.
I like that Vince Gilligan plays with expectations too, because I thought that finding all of the immune people was going to be like a season-long arc, and it's like, nope, actually we can find all of them in 10 seconds and you're on a plane. Done.
Like, you can communicate with them. Like, when she's like, oh, can I speak to them? And, you know, like, Zosha is kind of like zoned out for a moment because, like, they need to ask. And it's like, oh yeah, they'll speak with you. And then they can put them all,
she thinks, like, because she gets angry that she's glitching them out again, but really she's just setting the whole thing up and they're ready to go. There's a plane waiting for her within minutes.
Yeah, and you can see her caution of that, like, increasing as time goes on. You know, she suddenly realized, I think, of course, that, you know, despite the existence of the hive, as Cris was saying, each of these people is a real individual who was subsumed into this. And I think she obviously felt empathy. She decided there's no point in refusing the help. It definitely makes sense to have Helen buried in a way that, you know, is well done, right? Helen at the very least deserves that. I think Carol kind of sees that. I think that's a kind of a sign of Carol's inherent selflessness. I think that's something the show wants us to be attuned to. The fact that she's willing to consider people above herself. is that part of the whole self-loathing thing? Like, is it that she cares more about people, or is it that she cares less about herself? I guess we'll see as we get to know her more. But that's something that will kind of become clearer based on her actions. And we do see her act quite a lot. I mean, there were definitely a few moments when I straight up laughed out loud at the absurd ironies on display in this episode. But my favorite might be the moment I realized why she was at the back of the plane. Like, because there is a teaser where she's in the plane and you can see Zosha kind of like looking at her, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, like this is why she's in the plane, first of all. And she sat at the very back just to be as far away from them as possible.
It's just stubborn as hell.
Because they have that tracking shot where you can, or it's just like, I guess a regular, but I mean they go right through business class, and you're like, if the plane is just for me, I'm sitting up there, right? You know what I mean? Like,
I thought it was a much smaller
in the back
plane
in
from the
economy,
teaser.
like in the worst seat. But she just wants to be so far away.
Yeah, it's very like indignant, very stubborn. Like she just does not want to give these people a win to show that she's accepting them yet.
Yeah,
but
it's pretty cool.
You asked a bit ago about why she let Rabana come back, and when I was watching it, I just thought, she doesn't want to be alone. But it becomes apparent that there's more to that. It's I think kind of what you guys were touching on. It's more about like who she is rather than the situation that she's in. Yeah. And in a way, I feel like even if it's not in the forefront of her mind, like there's a knowing that Helen's in there. There's a part of her that needs to nurture that connection to them. Like there has to be. She can't completely be isolated, because as much as she hates it, Helen does still exist in there on some level. Yeah. So that's really there's really a lot going on.
Yeah. And they even have the classic like run to save her from leaving at the airport at the end, which is, classic like rom-com. But I think exactly that. Like she's, like I said, she could talk to Helen and anybody, but it's her. And I think she definitely starts to care from the way they're staring at each other on the tarmac, and then she runs out to get her.
What were you guys expecting? Yeah. Like, what were you expecting when when Zosha says that, the last person, and they're in Bilbao, by the way, in Spain. And, when Zosha says, oh, like there's like, the last person isn't here yet. He requested a special plane, which takes longer to prepare. And I'm just like, I don't know what I was expecting. But when I saw what I saw, it made so much sense. Like I just had to. I was literally just out loud, like, "You have got to be kidding me!"
But
then it makes so much sense, because honestly, why would you not?
Yeah.
Like think about it, it's just like, why would you not? Like this is somebody who's not even American.
Available to anyone who asks.
Yeah. I had thought about that earlier.
It's a beautiful line.
Yeah.
Available to anyone who asks is just a beautiful line, because of course it is.
Oh my gosh. I know. I had thought earlier in the episode, I was like, I'd be living like a king in this world. And then they literally introduced the character that is thinking like that and just really taking advantage of the situation. Mr. Diabate is his name, I think.
Yes, Kumba Diabate.
However we pronounce that.
I feel like, going into Bilbao, that's where we start to really get like some excellent character work, because obviously so far we've technically been interacting with, like, for the most part, with two characters, Carol and the Hive, right? But now we have a few other people who are not in the Hive, and we get something that is really, really helpful, especially for a narrative like this, which is diversity of perspectives. So my first question going into the Spain scenes was literally, my very first question in my head was, why is Lakshmi such bad vibes? Like, I really wanted to understand, and I figured we'd find out in due time. And of course we did. She clearly is mad at Carol because she is aware. Yeah. She's aware of what happened. You can see the little Band-Aid on her head. It's just like, wait, why are you hurt?
that's the minor injury that Zosha brought up earlier. It was a minor injury. She leaves out the fact that that's also connected to a death in the family. You know, her grandfather.
And they
dying.
really like the Hive really works very hard to keep that information from Carol, because Carol's like, okay, how many people died? And that's the one question the Hive doesn't answer. And I found that so interesting. It's like, why? And then I realized this could actually be because the Hive is afraid to upset Carol so that they don't get in danger again.
There's that, and then there's also the idea that they don't want to hurt her.
Yeah.
They know telling her that will hurt her. So like, you know, like that's so interesting, you know what I mean? Because originally when you first see it, you think, why are they, because she's obviously withholding information there. And then then you realize that she also left out the idea that Carol killed this person's inadvertently, but killed this person's grandfather. Yeah. And you're thinking, do they have an agenda? And it's like, yeah, maybe their agenda is just that they don't want to hurt anyone, just like they say it is.
Yeah.
And, but that also leads to deception and all this other weirdness, you know?
Yeah. I do think it's genuine though. And I think there was like a line towards the end after she causes the second seizing and she feels way more guilty because she had to watch, you know, people see their family members seizing up and, you know, it flashes back to her and like how that was the worst moment of her life. But she says to Zosha, like, do you got anything to make me stop doing this? And that line moment really hit me hard because I think that's, you know, she just doesn't know what's wrong with her. Why does she lash out
really
like this? Why is she
want
like this?
Yeah, she doesn't want to hurt anybody. And I think obviously there's something missing too, because all the remnants, as I call them, all the people who still have their individuality, I'm just calling them the remnants, they are speaking to their families like they're still related. Yeah. It's like they don't even, it's like, yeah, you're still my daughter. They don't even care. And I wonder if Carol would be like them if she still had Helen. Like,
absolutely.
would she also still be talking to Helen like she's Helen?
They don't have a choice. If the person that if even a sliver of the person, like your son, even if a sliver of just your son is still in that body, you can't see that objectively anymore. I mean, that's the setup they have here, right? And Diabate doesn't seem to have any direct family, but he has this mindset that like, I'm getting everything I want here, so how can that be wrong? And these people aren't. There's no. The only pain and suffering that exists in this world is whenever Carol loses her temper.
Like, it's crazy. I mean,
like he said, there's no crime. There's nobody's in prison. You know, no exploitation. Nobody's going to, you know, invade the country that's next door. Is it bad?
Yeah, Diabate is wild.
Well, Carol brings up, because I thought about this, you know, they say there's like no racism, no one's in jail, but then she kind of brings up that idea of consent later, right? When he wants to, you know, take Zosha with him and she's like, your idea of paradise is being used like some sex doll because he wants that. And you're like, oh, right. Like none of these women that he's with have any sort of choice in the matter. And I guess they're like, right, everyone's happy.
But do those women
willing to do whatever, but would they feel that way if they weren't under this virus? And does that matter? You know, I think
the show also wants us to ask the question of like, okay, do those women actually even still technically exist in the same way? Like, are they the same people? Like this whole idea of personality is another thing that the show wants us to wrestle with. And, you know, I mean, putting aside, like when you think about personality, like for example, Diabate, right? This guy is essentially the realized embodiment of every 15-year-old who's been asked the question, what would you do if you were king for a day? Like this guy gets Air Force One. He calls it Air Force Kumba. He has a harem, and which is just like at some point it's
literal
just like,
harem that
it's
he
like, oh my God,
with.
bro, like don't be such a stereotype. But then again, it's just like there's no one to check that he's being a stereotype, so he's a stereotype. I mean, look at his outfit. He's wearing a freaking custom tag hair Monaco, for crying out loud. Like, look at that guy's watch. I mean, everybody who's left is okay with this except Carol, and you kind of are forced to ask the question: is this because she doesn't have Helen? Like, if these people were alone like she is, would they also be lashing out? And that brings up, I think, one of the bigger questions of episode 2, which is is there a real antagonist here? Like, is she basically at this point a rebel without a cause? Like, what is Carol fighting against? Because the thing she's fighting against doesn't even want to fight her. So somehow, because the show is so amazingly written, we still feel that tension. We still feel that push and pull. And there's clearly something that she's against. So Carol is essentially against the situation. But
and also
there's no
herself,
person.
I think that her own duality that they've established is there, and I think, you know, deep down we all want to believe that humanity is, you know, regardless of our flaws, it's worth preserving, right? We do, you know, humans do every unimaginably terrible thing, but it's not all of us, you know. Like there's always that sense that the individual has choice and that we can, you know, we're worth it, you know, like we're better than the worst of us or whatever. And you know, I think that she's right there. It's just the way that the situation is laid out. Like I said, they have families. And yes, I guess if you came to them and said, look, I can fix this, you know, I can make it right, and they make them back to how they were, then that's one thing. But if you just want people to be on your team to conspire and there's really nothing actionable in front of them, they're probably just going to stick with their families and deal with, you know, if they say that they're happy, then, you know, it has happened without their consent. But at the same time, nobody that did that or imposed that on them is there to pay for it. You know what I mean? It's really like a natural accident. Like it's like a freak nature, you know, freak, you know, occurrence of like act of God kind of situation, right? So
yeah, exactly. And
like, who are you going to hold responsible?
That's what I was saying about diversity of perspectives, right? Shumei asked what might be the seminal question of the entire enterprise. Do what? Like Carol's like, we have to do something. And Shumei is like, literally though, do what? What?
Yeah, tell us.
Not just what should we do, but what can we do? Like, is there anything to do? And I mean, from the jump, once I saw these people, I had a feeling that at least one of them would want to join. So it's interesting that they actually show us that and lay out the person's reasoning for that. And, you know, she's essentially like, or at least the group, especially Lakshmi, who clearly has, who at this point I was still wondering, like, is Lakshmi bereaved or just madly inconvenienced? Like, what is her deal? And then obviously we find out, but then she's like, don't tell her how to think. And that is low-key such a fair point, because it's almost like Carol is trying to create her own coalition / hive against the hive. So Lakshmi is like, you're talking about individuality, but you want us to do what you want. How is that different? You know, and that is such an interesting philosophical question.
Yeah. I think too, I just keep going down like the mental health like metaphor, but you know, I feel like it's that idea of like, why am I the only one that feels this way? Why does no one else feel like me? Like, why is no one else as miserable as I am? And so I think that's happening in that like literal sense of, you know, them not wanting to save the world the way she does, but then, you know, also probably feeling she had even pre-virus. Like, why is everyone else kind of okay going around in life, but I'm kind of like performing, you know, in my daily life and sort of have a persona put on. So I like that. I also, in this scene, I really liked the shot of Carol in front of the presidential seal, almost like she's the leader now of her country of 6 people. And they're like, actually, we don't want you as our leader. We're not into that.
Yeah, she was impeached real fast. And
I really like that about the second episode too. Watching her try to jump into this role that's obviously not natural. I mean, that's usually something that's rewarded in a story. Yeah. You know what I mean? If someone comes out of their shell and is willing
somebody stepping up, right?
Yeah, and stepping up did absolutely nothing for her in this episode at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and it led to another outburst. And that,
it feels worse off. And I remember when Wendy Abate asked for lunch, and by the way, the outfit changes. Like, this dude is living it up. But anyway, like we get to the lunch, and then there's this safari vibe, and he's like, you know, they made this food like my tantine awa, and I'm like, dude, of course they made it like her. They are her.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. She's in there.
So it's crazy. And, I started to think about what this hive would or wouldn't do for these people. And then, I had asked myself a question from the beginning, or at least from the beginning of episode 2, or at the very least since the end of episode 1, which was, would they eliminate her? Like, if they can't get her to join, is there a scenario where they would just be like, okay, for the good of everybody, we'll just get rid of you and it's going to be okay? But that's a question I had at least up until the point where Rabana reveals that they don't kill. And that's just going to be so interesting. Like,
they really
what are they going to do when the fresh
meat's
gone? Yeah, like they can't hurt her. They won't. At first it's like, oh, we won't hurt you, but it's like, oh, we literally can't. Like, that's not a thing that we do, and we can't hurt anything at all. Like, if you're gonna like kill your own chicken, we'll cook it for you, but we can't harm living things. I mean, that is just something, right? Which is why, like, the whole thing about how many people died and the question that keeps coming up, like, she basically forces it out of them. And, that's why it's such a touchy subject for them. I think it's partly because of that, because Zosha says in the initial, onset, 886,477,591 people died, which is, well, obviously close to 1 billion people, but let's look at it this way. Like, that is more than 1/10 of the world's population.
In fact, it's about 10%, right?
Yeah, if you assume that there are 8 billion people on the planet, that's actually like 11.08%. So they said Carol killed 11 million people, which she hilariously, like darkly funny, says that she's the biggest mass murderer since Stalin, which, oh man, like, good God almighty. But she said she killed, okay, so 11 million people. Like, for reference, that is more than the population of the UAE, the population of New York, of London, the UK, of LA, of Toronto, Paris, Cape Town, and the entirety of Switzerland. Like, that number is roughly 4 times the population of Toronto and Paris, just on that list alone. Like, this is insane, because Carol tells the rest of the remnants, you are traitors to the human race. Right? But she is the one who has harmed the most people since this thing started. Right? Like, is Diabate
it really
more
takes
correct?
away her position of having the moral high ground. She can't really make the argument.
She slips right off of it when she tries to walk away too. Jeez.
You like feel so bad for her though, because she really, it doesn't mean to, I think when you're watching, you're like, that seems almost like the rational response, because this is crazy and maybe you would lash out. So I think anyway, just Rhea Seehorn's performance, I think, is just,
it's
I don't
fantastic.
know, she's selling that well, where I think she is such a abrasive personality, but she has a lot of like empathy, I think,
with the relentless
garners a
drinking
lot
too.
of empathy from the audience. Yeah.
If you're gonna hit me, that was just so funny. And I feel like it also wants us to ask another kind of question based on everything we've seen, right? We heard Diabate's little speech about how, like, the world is essentially perfect now. Why would we change it, right? He talks about how, and we've already discussed how, like, he has his harem. He wants Zosha to become part of that harem. Carol is like, whatever. But then she's like, actually, you know what? You can't have my one friend. You cannot, I'm not letting go of her. So I guess we'll see where that ends up at the end of, at the beginning of episode 3, since they're, I guess, going to the Guggenheim. But the big question, I think, and I think that's going to be a trend for the show, each episode, we're going to have like a question that we're going to be dealing with, or at least I know that I'll have one because I'm overthinking this clearly. But that question for me right now, the overarching one for the 2-episode premiere is Carol smart, or is she just miserable? Is there even a difference at this point? Like, which one is it? Because she says to the others, I'm smart, and I know that, I know that like I wouldn't ask a drug dealer how the drugs are, because obviously they're going to sell the drugs to me. But then I did actually find myself thinking, it never occurred to her to ask, hey, what's it like? Because she still dehumanized them. Like everybody else humanized the people, partly because of the family members, right? Like they thought, okay, how are you feeling?
Was huge how she never even learned Zosha's name. She's like, who's Zosha? It's like the person you've been hanging out with for like
the Abate is like, we built a connection over the past day. I learned her name. And I'm just like, you know what? I can't fault this guy.
Yeah. Oh my God. No, it's that like stark moment where you realize how self-absorbed she's been. And I think almost didn't realize that because I think she thought
warranted.
She was being...
I mean, let's be fair. Some of it's warranted. She was burying her significant other, but
yeah.
But like I said, I think it's in that way where I think like, I don't know, self-absorbed in an empathetic way, like in a mental health way, where sometimes you just don't even realize it. You're just going through your stuff, and you're like, "Oh my God, I didn't ask other people what was going on yet."
I think it's supposed to read as a red flag, like something that we take note of as that,
despite her
she's
desire
going through
to be
some
selfless,
shit, but she's also kind of in her own head.
Yeah, in her own head so much that like she has to be reminded of like cues of the way people are. And of course Diabate is quite a character, but the fact that she's like, accompany you for what? And he's just looking at her like, well, and I'm just like, wow, this show is insane. Like it's
what
crazy.
People
like,
do from time to time.
That like the humor that they're bringing is actually very effective. And I think that kind of balances things out, especially since Carol is feeling so much guilt. And maybe this is what makes her grow more as a person. Like, obviously, this is going to be part of her arc. It's like, how is she going to learn how to communicate in a way that doesn't harm people, right? So it's obviously going to be a bit of a journey. Like, the technical aspects of the show, they do a good job of telling us how Carol is feeling and what might be going on in her head, even when Rhea Seehorn isn't saying anything. You know, like I remember, for example, the initial conversation with Zosha, or at least one of the initial conversations, when they're standing outside the house and you see that mirror shot with the car, you know, and you can tell that they know everything because, you know, they have Helen's mind. And it's like, how does she fight against this? That's a question you're asking in episode 1 and at the beginning of episode 2. But by the end of it, the question becomes, why should she fight against this? And I think the show is clearly very, very good at making us do that, you know, jumping around. Like, you know, she's doing DIY landscaping at one point, and then at the end, she's just like, please don't leave me alone. Like, she's like, warm up my plane, I want to go, but then she doesn't go, right? So, yeah, I feel like the absurdity of episode 1 is kind of grounded a little bit more in episode 2. You know, like the humor is still there, but like it's becoming a little bit more, I guess, kind of relatable. Like at first, when she's dragging Helen's body into like to the house, and the 2 little kids come out, and which was scary, by the way.
About that.
You know, they're like, give us a couple of minutes to clear out. In my head, I'm like, do they mean like everyone? And then it turns out they did mean everyone. They literally left the area. So now she has that whole cul-de-sac to herself. No one else is there except Zosha, who is her, I guess, person. What does he call her? Diabate call chaperone. He calls her a chaperone. Yeah. And that's just kind of amazing. Like maybe each of the remnants should have their own chaperone. That would actually be funny since they all speak all languages, apparently. So yeah, like this show is crazy.
Well, if they've got their family, unlike Carol, who's, I know, I felt so bad for her, just in meeting everyone when she saw that everybody had a family member and she's the only one that didn't, and she just has that face of like, are you kidding me? Like it's just me again. Like I'm still kind of the odd one out here.
Yeah, there. You know, you talked about the way that the comedy shifted. Like there were so many funny moments in the first episode, and I think they made sense to, because it was such a like you said, there was even almost a horror show vibe in a lot of those early scenes of whenever people started changing. But like, I don't. It's just like some of those little ones. Like there was a part where she moved away from, she left the hospital and she stops for a second, and you see there's a person helping someone to a car who's hopping. And they're missing their leg, and then she sees them get in the car, and then a second later you see someone carrying the leg show up to bring the leg and give it to the person inside the car.
Yeah, and they have all the best surgeons in the world,
so many funny little details like that.
Yeah, just when you think things can't get any more unsettling, they roll out the quiet corpse cleanup crew.
Yeah,
they just like it's wild. Like Carol watches that from the window, and she's just like, "Oh my god, what is even happening anymore?"
And I know, like, we went in knowing about as much as you could know without actually
without knowing,
without actually being spoiled just from watching every teaser. And at least from my perspective, I read all the articles and tried to glean every little detail that they were giving away. So I pretty much knew that this was coming. It was a signal coming from space, and that the hive mind was a thing and all that. And so when I watched it the second time, I watched it with my wife, who knew nothing, like went completely cold. And I was watching her react to these scenes, like seeing them come into where they started doing preparing the petri dish scene, where everyone in sequence is swabbing their like I knew what that was going on there, right? But she had no idea, so she was just watching it unfold. And it was so delightful because she's putting it together. She's like, they're all moving at the same time. Like what, they're not talking. How are they? And then to not go off completely on a tangent, but you were talking about when they left the neighborhood. Like the way that they pull out in the cars, and it's like the precision. It's like machine like. Nobody's looking around. Nobody's waiting for anybody else to go. They all go exactly where they're supposed to go. And drive away with the most efficiency. And I think it was right there where she was just like, oh, okay, now I see what's going on. Like, these people are all literally like one mind. And I was like, yep, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to find out when, like, when the information becomes apparent. Like, because the show, like a well-written show, will have everything you need to understand it. It's really cool because, good TV shouldn't make you feel dumb. It should make you reach higher. And I think, like, we're in a world where so many shows now are made for people who are just on their phones the entire time. They're not watching. But like, you have a show like this where you will actually miss stuff if you don't pay attention. And I just love that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things about, and like, I don't think this show will fall into like being a really big mystery. I'm sure people are going to have a lot of theories and stuff like that, but they're not to me, these aren't the kind of mysteries where I feel like we're trying to solve the show. Like I feel like we know that it's going to be resolved in a reasonable amount of time. But like, the as far as like what, one of the things that I sometimes I get upset with television where it does kind of explain everything, like you pick up on it yourself, and then it feels like it has to go this extra step to explain what it's going for or whatever. This show kind of does that, but in a way where it feels like it's patting you on the back for figuring it out already.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like when he's there at the end of the episode running everything down, it's not like he's like, in case you missed it, this is what's actually happening here. It feels like you're working with the show. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like that you arrived at all of those conclusions, and then it's saying, yep, you got it, buddy.
Yes.
And like, that's so subtle, but it makes such a difference to me.
It's very effective.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And like another example that would be Zosha later, after Carol causes the seizing for the first time. And I think it's because she sort of caused a conundrum in Zosha when she was like, you're saying this is the greatest day of all humanity, but you're the reason Helen died. And it almost seems like they can't process that because they're not supposed to harm people. And then she starts seizing. But then when she comes back, she says it out loud, like, we can't handle these really bad negative emotions that are directed right at us. So I think it's an example of, like, you basically already got it and they just showed it to us and they didn't have to explain it, but they just give you like a little nugget to show you that you're in the right direction.
Yeah, like they don't go over the top with it to where like it's like, just in case you really let that, just you were looking at your phone or whatever, I'm just gonna throw this out here at this point to make sure that everybody's on board. Like, yeah, like I said, I think it's very subtle because I mean it's not without exposition, but they deliver it in such a thoughtful way that it just seems to. I don't know. I mean, because that's what when I watch TV, like I want to feel things, like I want to have emotions. I want to have a reaction, but I also like to be rewarded for paying attention, and that's where it really, like, when it feels like the writers know what you're thinking about and they are catering to that in a way with, the way that they construct things, like that's where it feels really satisfying. And so far this show is really delivering on that front.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Everything is really contributing to the story, from the music, which I have to shout out. It really helps everything feel just the right amount of unsettling. The cinematography going stupid, like when she pulled up to the hospital and like she stops right in front of the camera, it's beautiful. Even the things they don't show, like when she looks at that baby and it's clearly very just like she's just like shocked by whatever she saw in that carrier. Everything about it. When she runs in front of the plane, when the plane's flying away, how all the people move in lockstep, it's all very cool. It's all very intriguing, and I think it's doing the right amount of revealing just enough to keep you understanding, but keeping just enough to keep people coming back. And I think that's going to essentially give us an amazing season. I feel like it can only go up from here. So we have 7 more weeks of this? Because they're doing 9 episodes, right?
Yep,
9 episodes up until and including Boxing Day, because this is the streaming era and nobody needs ratings. So, yeah. Any final thoughts you guys have?
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see where things go. Like I said, I think things have just happened so fast. And they've also taken these big tonal shifts, right? With episode 1 being a little more horror and 2 being a little more dystopian, quirky, and I feel like those tonal shifts might just keep happening on the show. In terms of, like I said, I don't think this is that much a theory show, but just in terms of nuggets where I think we could find conundrums, it would probably be just in that fact that they can't make choices that would deliberately hurt someone. So I could just imagine where there's some sort of scenario concocted where there's like an impossible choice, and what does that do to the hive mind if they're put into just some inextricable situation. So I'm kind of curious if that's something that comes to fruition down the line. But I mean, I love it so far, so I'm just excited to see what they have cooked up.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The one thing that I was thinking about when I was watching, there's a really funny scene where, Zosha says, there's an easier way if you're open to it. And then they instantly chop her in the mini excavator to dig
I
the
loved
hole.
that. I was thinking about it too. I was like, can we get a machine?
Of course. Yeah. Like if you have everything at your disposal, of course that's what you want, right? But one of the things I was thinking about was when you do that, when you put together that kind of a shot and I mean, that costs a lot of money to fly that thing in on camera. You know what I mean? They have to get
Safely.
A helicopter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they had to do that. And so, like, I was just thinking, when you do something like that, there's a diminishing return, right? Like, you sort of have to ratchet it up each time. Like, the next time they surprise her with having the exact right thing at the right moment, it has to be kind of bigger than a helicopter with a mini excavator, or else it's just it'll get tired after a while, right? So I just wonder, because like, of course you trust that they would be able to if I'm thinking about that, then they're thinking about that. You know what I mean? So like they feel confident enough that they can keep that going for as long as they need to. And that I like that. I mean, that gives me, you know, that makes me feel like I can sit back and just enjoy and see what's coming next, you know?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that is a good place to call it. Thank you guys so much. This has been great. I'm really looking forward to the next episode. I don't even know what to say. This is going to feel like the biggest week of my life. But I'm going to spend this week recruiting and getting as many people to watch the show as possible. So if you're listening to this, please get as many people to watch the show as possible so we can all kind of discuss it and find our questions and answers together. Thank you all so much for listening. This is going to be an interesting season. And like I said, we're going to keep covering the episodes. Hopefully, as soon as they come out on Apple TV Plus, that will be the case pretty much every single time. And if it's not going to be, then we will let you know. But we're pretty optimistic. And definitely reach out to us on all of our socials. Subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Let us know what your questions are. Let us know if you have answers to any of the questions we have. And please check out Pete's coverage as well. Look up Pete Peppers on YouTube and everywhere. And probably find even more answers there. Thanks so much, guys. See you next week.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye-bye.